Hi, everyone. It's great to have you with us today. My name is Vanessa McBride. I'm the Science Director at the International Science Council. And it's our great pleasure to use this opportunity and this online meeting to give you an update on one of the projects we've been working on, and with that, the Center for Science Futures. So give me a minute, I'll share my slides. Great, I'm just waiting for that to wake up. I think it's awake. So, so this is an update on the project Science Systems Futures. And it's an opportunity to take stock, actually, about 2 years after the establishment of the Center for Science Futures at the International Science Council, to take some stock of where we are on that and of where we are on this new project that started a year into the lifetime of the Center for Science Futures. And so, as you know, the Center for Science Futures was established around May 2023. And the idea of the center was really to provide a kind of a place in which to explore how emerging trends in science and research systems are changing these systems and what we might be able to do about it. And there've been a couple of papers that have been published, or reports from the center in the last year, ranging across quite a wide variety of topics, starting from what transdisciplinary research might look like, from some assessments on how we evaluate and measure research, all the way up to looking at protecting science in times of crisis. So there's been a huge amount of kind of thought leadership coming out of the center through these reports and a number of others. And about a year ago, you may have seen that the ISC, through the Center for Science Futures, embarked on a project that was funded by the IDRC in Canada. And this really looked at a particular aspect of science systems futures. And it was focused very much on how these kinds of emerging technologies are transforming the way we do science, with a particular focus on science systems in the global south, because there might be opportunities in these science systems that are not available to more established systems, but there might also be a different set of challenges for these systems. And so the focus was really very much on 4 strategic objectives. One of these was about reflecting on these kinds of systems, so really taking the time to engage with the communities who are embedded within these systems. And to a large extent, that is a fraction of researchers, but also a fraction of decision makers in national science systems and decision makers in scientific organizations. So to reflect on their experience. A second option is around providing some technical support, and you'll see this demonstrated in one of the parts of the project. A third is around building a community, so that it's not just the International Science Council interacting with these different organizations or individuals, but that it's actually forming a kind of a peer learning network that can provide value beyond the lifetime of the project. And then lastly, of course, it's also to try and amplify the voice of scientists and decision makers in the global south. And that means using the structures and the pathways that are being shaped by the ISC, whether that's to create a pathway to a voice at the multilateral policy level, or to create a stronger pathway to having a voice within science decision-making structures. So those are really kind of the 4 pillars of the project. And you'll hear from some of my colleagues today about the various activities that the project entails. These activities I've just numbered here, 1 to 3. The first of these is around AI, or artificial intelligence for science. And this is a project that's really looking at how AI is transforming science, technology, and innovation systems. We'll have Doreen, who I'll introduce shortly, to tell us about that. The second part of the project is really the embodiment of this kind of technical support and peer learning network that we're building through a digital journeys project. And that's around gathering the knowledge and experience for many of our Global South STI actors along their journey towards digital maturity. And the third part of the project is around the emerging technologies and science industry relationships. So this is the part of the project that we're only just beginning right now, and we're starting to explore, and we thought it was a very good time to have this meeting because it's an opportunity as well to hear from our membership community in terms of what is important to them, what works and what doesn't work. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen and I'll introduce you to my colleague, Dr. Doreen Samando-Ewes, who's a science officer at the Center for Science Futures, and she will talk to us about the first part of the project, AI for Science. Thanks, Doreen.
Great, thank you, Vanessa. I think you can probably see my screen, at least I hope so. And I'll just... There we go. Oops.
That's it.
So yeah, AI for Science. This was sort of one of the flagship projects of the Center for Science Futures, where upon initiating the center and thinking about science futures, one of the main things that was happening at the time was the release of ChatGPT and the whole discussion around artificial intelligence. And so we asked ourselves our question: how can we be useful to the ISC community and our members? And we decided to embark on a project where we look at national research ecosystems and how they're adopting AI, or at least thinking about the adoption of AI across the research ecosystem in their country. And so the kinds of questions that we were asking when we started this project, and we went to the experts and to the community, was first, how is AI uptake in national research ecosystems happening? What exists in the literature, and what are the main issues related to uptaking AI for science and research? And so to kind of address these questions first, we did a revision of around 300 publications at the time. So this was in September 2023 in partnership with Nature Research Intelligence. And we came up with the critical issues, with the list of the critical issues that are related to the uptake of AI in science. And I'll just take you to this publication that you can access yourself through the council.science publications AI-science-systems. And this list is really to serve as a tool. It's what we've used internally to kind of shape our discussions with the local and regional experts. And in broad description, it's divided into 3 themes. So research and development agenda setting, technology assessment, foresight, and science advice is the first theme, where we look at priority sectors, funding practices, capacity building and retention, infrastructure, international collaboration, jobs, careers, and unemployment, network and repository security. So you can see that these are issues that are quite broad in themselves, but then we address some subtopic issues in this tool. We also have the second theme on public engagement, science communication, and public accountability. That includes scientific integrity in the conduct of research, something that is quite fundamental, including environmental impact of using these technology and scientific publishing. And the last theme around regulation standards, private sector governance, and self-regulation, quite important in when we're also discussing policy perspectives. So I'll just leave that here and invite you to visit this tool and let us know how useful it can be for you. And then just going back to the slides here. So this was one of the first steps that we did in our approach for this project. And as I said, we identified local experts through the ISC community and network. We had a bit of more focus on low and middle income countries from the beginning of the project, just because we were interested to see how these different countries, both small, medium in size and large countries, are doing, whether economically or just in terms of access and accessibility to the technology. And in order to approach this project, we also wanted to write case studies, so country case studies, and we developed a guideline to help the authors in writing their case study. We also conducted closed full-day regional workshops that I'll be talking in just a few about them, and then we also did one-on-one consultations for developing each of the country case studies. So just to give you an idea of the goal of the exercises that we were doing in this national preparation of AI in research ecosystems. Primarily, it was around helping to shape the discussion among the international scientific and policy communities on the critical issues that AI raises for the organization of science and research, and really thinking about how that impacts the future of science and scientific practices. We also wanted to really gather the basic knowledge and information about the issues and the country's efforts in preparation for science and research ecosystems for AI. So it's really a benchmark study where we understand the landscape and what's happening in the different countries as they look at AI in their country, and specifically, as much as possible, what's happening for research and science. So here we also think about how we can help countries and as they develop their roadmaps for the uptake of AI in their science systems. And here it's really about the fact that we're creating the space to allow this discussion and trying to influence in the fact that we need to think about these issues, especially when it comes to AI and its impact on research and science. And a large goal of this is also, as Vanessa had mentioned in the beginning, is to create regional and global networks of people. So community building in the reflections on adaptation and implementation of AI for science. So here I'm saying AI for science, but as you can imagine, when we talk about an emerging technology like AI, we're also talking about reflections on emerging technologies in general on science. So as sort of a launch of this project, one of the first things that we did after we did the literature review was to hold for a regional workshop in Kuala Lumpur. At the time, that was where the Global Knowledge Dialogue of the ISC was happening, and we prepared a full-day workshop as a side event. And this was done in partnership with the Academy of Sciences of and Australian Academy of Science. Was then followed by the first publication. So at the time, we were already doing one-on-one consultations, identifying the case study authors. And in March 2024, we released this first publication called Preparing National Research Ecosystems for AI. And the countries that were included in this first edition include Australia, Benin, Brazil, Cambodia, Chile, China, India, Malaysia, Mexico, Oman, Uruguay, and Uzbekistan. So as you can see, quite a diverse number of countries. And then you can, I invite you to read the publication if you haven't, where each country is really presenting what's happening in the current state when it comes to thinking about AI in the country. The second workshop that we held was in April 2024. This was very much similar to the workshop that we held in Kuala Lumpur. It was just to bring in regional experts from Latin America and the Caribbean, and indeed to enlarge the number of experts that we have in this group, but also to bring in more case study experts and expand on the paper. And I'll be presenting that in a bit. Following this workshop, we also launched officially the IDRC project, so the Science Systems Futures, in May 2024. And we had a third workshop in Muscat in Oman just January 2025, where we also invited regional experts, local experts from the Middle East and North Africa region, as well as some other African experts. So following this workshop in Oman, we released the second version of this publication. And we actually had a webinar for the launch. We can share the link with you to if you'd like to, if you'd be interested to watch the webinar, where we had a discussion among between 3 of the experts that were case study authors for the publication, and we discuss in large on how these different countries see AI's impact and how their country is preparing for it. So in the second version, what we had was new country case studies. So as I said, we expanded on the number of country case studies that we have. Here we had Colombia, Dominican Republic, Palestine, Panama, Pakistan, and South Africa join us in writing what's happening in their country. And then we also had case study authors from the previous version update some of their case studies. So we had 4 of these case studies updated: Australia, Brazil, China, and Malaysia. And then we anticipate to have a 3rd version, a conclusion paper of this whole project by the end of 2025. And the reason for these versioning is really, as I said, to primarily to expand on the number of country case studies and enlarge this benchmark study that we're doing. It's helping us to understand the kinds of approaches that are happening in different countries. It's bringing in new experts into this pool of experts that we're trying to create a network from and allow them to have the space to talk to each other, to learn from each other, and hopefully to be able to work with us along this whole project, not just with AI. And the idea of also updating some of these case studies, as you can imagine, there's a lot happening with AI, and then we're interested to see at the country level how much is actually changing as well. And this is something that we see, here it's 4 out of 12 case studies that were updated, and in this third version, we'll find out also how much we can see from these case studies in the sense of the development within the 2 years at the national level. So I just wanted to share with you some of the key learnings from the project. Primarily, as you can imagine, from the diversity of countries that we've been dealing with, countries are at different levels of preparing for AI and what they have in place for adoption of AI. Some of them from just development, and some are from developing the tools and the needs for AI, and others at observation stage. There's a variety of sectors that are mentioned by the case studies in the sense of the specific, and it changes in terms of specificity and versatility of AI for science. And this can be the types of sectors that we're talking about, meaning whether it's agriculture, healthcare, education, etc., and science-related fields specifically. A third learning from this effort so far is also that we see, very importantly, that many nations are focusing AI efforts on specific areas. So, for example, human capacity or infrastructure, and it is a challenge to be addressing all these different dimensions when indeed for AI development you need a holistic approach. So this is something that we're also learning, that is indeed a challenge for countries to approach in such a holistic manner. A shared priority for countries includes priority industries includes agriculture, healthcare, and education. Just to highlight that these are the things that very much were highlighted when we compared the case studies so far in these 18 country case studies that we have. And just on the major issues and the gaps that we identified, one of the things that we identified mostly, and actually the way that in our regional workshops, is clarity on what we mean by AI for science. So what are the technologies that this would include, and what type of science and research would we use in the sense of AI for science? And I think that, with ChatGPT, of course, being invasive in across so many sectors and so many types of work, LLMs were quite dominant in the discussions. But when we talk about AI, of course, there are so many other types of technologies that we also need to think about, especially when we're thinking about futures and artificial intelligence adoption. A second gap that we identified, a challenge mostly, not just a gap, it's the awareness that actually there's a lot of need for data, and data as in data infrastructure, data storage, data sharing. How do you do that? How do you manage the data? How do you find the data, etc.? And we realized that this was really a core part of the discussions when it comes to the limitations and challenges that countries are facing. A third one is on sustainability and AI adoption. As you can imagine, the technology itself to be adopted requires a lot of energy. And this is something that we realized was not necessarily a fundamental part of the thinking across countries. And we want to address that now. And just so as a transition, I want to highlight that actually based on these gaps, we're going to tackle them by developing technical papers. So these are what we call clarification or technical papers, where we delve more into depth in these three different topics. So we'll be looking at the types of AI for science, AI and sustainability. So what is sustainable AI, and data for AI for science. So these are going to be short papers, and their goal is to serve as tools to help STI leaders in thinking about science policy aspects of AI. And we expect to publish this by the end of July. And I'll stop here, Vanessa. I hope I didn't run over time.
Perfect, Doreen. So I think what we'll do now is just have a couple of questions from the audience. Feel free to raise your hand and add your question, speak your question live, or if you're shy, you're welcome to put it in the chat and I'll keep an eye on it. You may want to stop your screen sharing now, Doreen. You can see the audience. So whilst we're waiting, I could maybe kick us off with one question. You said one of the, I think a challenge, Doreen, was around a holistic approach to AI. What does that actually mean? Holistic in what sense?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to what's actually happening on the ground, a lot of it is on what the country can do in terms of capacity that is already, or feasibility of access to the things that it has in place already. Or sometimes it's about putting funding in certain aspects. So, for example, we have, we have some of the country case studies, are putting a lot of funds into training for skills, etc. But then actually the infrastructure might be lacking. So you're putting a lot of investment in one part, but not to the other parts, and that's something that we heard a lot. We heard across countries. The challenge is to be able to do that investment across these different needs for AI adoption, and this is what we mean by a challenge and having a holistic approach, is to find how you can approach AI adoption from all these different areas.
I see no raised hands yet, so I'm happy to take the prerogative of suggesting that we are going to put together a third set of case studies. And so if I think members are interested in exploring this, within their own countries, then to please get in touch with us, because the list of countries that we'll choose for those case studies is not yet complete. And so if there's, interest, we could accommodate that, right?
Definitely, yeah, that would be great.
Okay, so let's leave that there for now, and let me introduce our next speaker of the session, who's Abigail Freeman. She's a founder of Brink, which is a consultancy group who's been working with us on this Digital Journeys project. I'll leave it to you to take it forward, Abby. Thank you. You're muted, but we can see your screen.
You can see my screen?
We can.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. It's so lovely to be here. As Vanessa said, I'm Abby Freeman. I'm one of the co-founders of Brink. And we were engaged by the ISC to work with a small cohort of ISC members on their digital transitions and digital journeys. So I'm just here to share a little bit about that work. We're still midway through it, sort of nearing the end. So it's still work in progress, but very happy to be sharing that and answer any questions that you may have. It's very much a learning and support initiative. It's been designed to help science organisations, particularly those with a focus or presence in low and middle income countries. And it's all about building the capacity and the community needed to navigate digital transformation in a way that aligns with members' missions and their active contexts as well. Those contexts can be very varied. So we're just wrapping up, as I said, the technical assistance now. We're starting to take the insights that we've gathered from the cohort and start to build tools and guides that we're going to be making available to all members. And so my hope is in sharing some of the work that we've been up to, you'll be able to see, you know, what might be relevant to your organisation as well. First of all, you know, what do we mean by digital? A survey some of you might have fed into in 2023 took a bit of a pulse check, a barometer, acted as a barometer from across the membership, and it's been captured in the paper Science Organisations in the Digital Age, which I would highly recommend. The report sort of identified some challenges and some opportunities. And you know, the challenges for Global South members and Global South organisations are quite specific. There are structural challenges about accessing open science platforms, there are digital infrastructure challenges, and there's quite limited South-South collaboration. And you know, addressing these disparities, especially as the world becomes more digitally enabled and globally networked, feels particularly important. But at the same time, those challenges also present opportunities, and there are major opportunities for you know, techniques like digitizing archives, but increasing access to knowledge, widening participation for researchers, and more besides. So that's sort of the why, and then what we've meant by digital through this work. It's not only new tools, but it's also that kind of culture and that mindset and the new ways of working. You know, digital allows us to be much more real time than being paper-based. Digital allows us to be much more experimental in our approaches and much more attuned to our members and our audiences and our stakeholders, and sort of using data to track what they need and what they want in real time. So it's been about those two elements, the tools and the ways of working. Our aim with designing this programme with ISC was really to build a cohort for members to receive strategic and technical assistance, and also to not just work directly one-to-one with ISC, but to work with each other. So when we were selecting the cohort, we really had an eye on that kind of peer-to-peer element as well. How might people learn not just from experts, but from each other, because you know, everyone in the cohort has been an expert in their own way. We wanted to encourage sharing across the cohort, and that element of building, you know, how do you really test and learn and iterate as you go? So those were the sort of three main elements that we had in mind as we designed the approach. What that looked like in reality, we had some sort of one-on-one organisation specific things. We did a baseline to assess digital maturity, and we paired up some one-to-one coaching with specialist coaches, things like SEO, like data management. As I mentioned, we had some peer-to-peer moments where the cohort could sort of really mentor and coach each other. And then we had some whole cohort events that happened as well. When I say the cohort, here it is. The pins, as you can see, truly global, and you know, a big shout out to people who've been joining calls at all times of night and day. Honestly, people have been so engaged, and it's been wonderful. That, you know, this is where the members are based, but the communities they serve are even more global than this, and so it's been really interesting for everyone in that cohort to learn about different contexts and to sort of really draw on experiences from each other. As you can see, it's everything from Jamaica to the Philippines, and even sector-wise, we've had a real spread. We've had from the Earth observation to the social sciences and everything in between. I thought I would share a couple of examples of the specific support that a couple of organisations have received, just to bring this to life a little bit. So here are a couple of the cohort, a bit of a sort of zoom in on the kind of support that they've been gaining from the programme. I first of all wanted to talk about the ISA. You can see Cecilia and Natalie there who've been super engaged on the programme. Their support very much focused on conferencing. You know, for them, that's a major way that they engage with their members. They have their first fully online conference for up to 5,000 attendees. And it's very large scale, but also a decentralized model. So with them, we were looking at, you know, what are the platforms that can really serve this kind of event? How do you think about the end-to-end experience, and how do you make sure that that experience sort of does what it's setting out to do? You know, they've been using this sort of particular experience to look at more broadly, how do you select and procure digital tools? And that's something that's been very useful across the whole cohort. And then on the second example, the Caribbean Academy of Science, you've got Alberta and Mark there who have been super engaged as well. They've been working with a web development expert to upskill their staff and to incorporate new features on their website. So they've been paper-based up till now. They've now got an online membership form, and they've got a new feedback form on their website, amongst other things. But it's not just the sort of output. They've also been really digging into how to design with users in mind, how to work through experiments rather than just build something, and how to make their data fair, so findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable to really maximize its value. So I'm conscious of time. I'm happy to answer any questions, but just before I wrap up, I'll share a little bit about what's coming next. If you've sort of seen this very whistle-stop tour and thought actually that's something that may be relevant to your organisation as well, we're now packaging up some of the tools that proved most valuable for the cohort. So that baselining, that digital maturity assessment, a user journey mapping for science organisations to help understand how different stakeholders interact with your services and uncover sort of pain points and where the opportunities lie for really optimising things. And then that tool I mentioned for how do you select digital tools with a zoom in on conferencing tools specifically. We'll be wrapping everything up in a report in the coming weeks as well. So do keep an eye out on the ISC website for that. Back to you, Vanessa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abby. I think we'll stop again and see if there are any questions either in the chat or online that people would like to put to you. I think it's very exciting that these tools are coming out. So we'll clearly highlight those as soon as they're available. We have two questions, so let me go first to Papa. Papa, please feel free to unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Abby, thank you, Doreen, and thank you, Vanessa. This is very interesting. And as you said, you know, AI is already ongoing in many countries. And then what we are focusing in now here in Senegal, the Senegal Academy of Science and Technology, is to take this opportunity and to see how we can train and offer jobs to young people. Unemployment is very high here. So I think AI might be a good opportunity to offer jobs for young people like data scientists. These are very new for us. Data scientists, data analysis, engineer for robotic. All these, I think, are opportunities. And it might be interesting also in collaboration with the International Science Council to see how we can develop curriculum. It's just short training, 3 months. And I think this is also an opportunity to contribute for the, you know, jobs in employment in many developing countries. And the second question is, you know, Doreen was talking about creating a regional network. I think it is important for sharing, learning. And I just want to ask, has this process of the creation of regional work have already started? Because this is something I think where people can share their experience and learn something for AI national plan strategic implementation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Papa. I'll direct that question to Doreen.
Yeah, sure. So I'm responding to the second question, I guess, on the network. And So Papa, the way that it's been working is that with these case study authors that we've been working, the regional workshops, these are the type of people, you know, the people that are in this sort of groups of experts, and now we're trying to create this network. So in a way, yes, the process has started because we've already engaged with these people, and we're trying to engage with them across the whole project. And the idea now is to create platforms where we would allow more exchange to happen. One of the things that we've done is to create a LinkedIn group where we hope for these people to exchange directly with each other. But then we are thinking of other ways of allowing it to be more of a network that can exchange in different ways. And I know that Vanessa already replied. We would be happy for people here on this call to express their interest in being part of this network if it's directly helpful for the work that you're doing, and if you know of institutions and how they're working with AI for science and research. So please do note to us if this is of interest to you.
Thank you, Doreen. I hope that was a good answer. Mark, over to you. Do you still have a question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Vanessa. And just a comment with respect to the ISC digital journey. Of course, Abby would have mentioned it, but I thought that I should just, comment on how important it has been to us from the Caribbean Academy of Sciences perspective. It has been an immense experience, and that has actually been transforming what we do at the academy, because like she rightly said, it has always been paper-based and emails and so on. But we are now upgrading our website and a number of other things that we're doing from this experience. And so thanks to ISC for giving us this opportunity. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to have that feedback, and thank you to the amazing team at Brink for supporting this project. Great. So I think we'll wrap up the section of the questions, and we'll move on to the last section of the presentation, where we're really broadening the scope a little bit. So this is about emerging technologies, not only AI, and it also looks a little bit about how we will interface between science and industry in the context of science as a global public good. So back to you, Doreen.
Yeah, so I guess you can hear me, and I'll just start the presentation. It's going to go from the beginning. So yeah, on emerging technologies and transformation. So I lightly touched on the fact that although we've been working on artificial intelligence, emerging technologies is also on the radar of the Science Systems Futures work. So looking at beyond AI and what other technologies that are emerging, and I'll elaborate a bit more on that, would have an impact on AI, on research and science ecosystems. So this project has a goal of shaping the reflections on the next wave of critical transformations for science, technology, and innovation systems globally, and their possible impact in the global south. That's the large ambition of this particular project. And the idea is to first identify and assess what impact selected emerging technologies would have on science systems in the global south. So that's one of the goals. And a second goal is to explore the role of private sector and industry in science ecosystems. So as we can all imagine and know, in many countries and economies, a large part of our research and development is taken by the private sector. And it's important for us to understand what kind of relationship and what sort of relationship we want to have between the public and private sector for research and science. And so to embark on this part of the Science Systems Futures project, we held a 2-day retreat and workshop just last month. And this included bringing in the Center for Science Futures Advisory Council. This is a 6 members of the council, as well as regional experts in the African region and beyond. And this includes experts that we've worked with in the AI for Science work. This was hosted by the African Academy of Science in Nairobi, in Kenya, and in this retreat, some of the technologies that we discussed. So we had sort of a pre-selected number of technologies, and then we used that event to allow experts to tell us a bit about what other technologies we should be looking into. So here are the technologies that were discussed, including new connectivity technologies, robotics and AI. Not necessarily technology, but sort of the infrastructure that is used now and is quite important for these other technologies. So a bit more cross sectors, data management, storage and sharing, and then virtual reality, extended reality. The other kinds of technologies that came up as well include neurotechnology, quantum technology, and quantum computing. So based on this retreat, what we'll be doing is writing up technology profiles of these technologies with the experts that we've discussed with in the retreat. And then that would be a sort of output that also explores what are the impact of these technologies on science and research ecosystems, particularly giving focus on their impact for the Global South communities. During this retreat, I just wanted to maybe some of you already attended, and this was a very interesting session because we had presentations from experts on the ground in Africa where they were using technologies for their research. I do encourage you to look for this page. We'll be uploading the whole session that was recorded as well. And it'll be interesting for you, I guess, to see also what kind of technologies are being used in the region, and for what kind of research purposes. And I just wanted to highlight as well one of the interesting things that happened in this retreat, and something that we'll be using to address in the outcome of this retreat is, what do we mean by emerging technology as well? So what is considered an emerging technology? And there was a lot of different ways of discussing what that means. It could be that the technology itself is still being developed. It's not necessarily yet accessible, in the sense that it's not yet fully ready. That's one thing, so kind of on the edge. The other thing is how available it is, and how many sectors are actually using it. So kind of looking at the technology itself, but also to what extent it's touched upon different sectors. So these are the kinds of different ways of that we were discussing on what we mean by emerging. And the other part was, as I highlighted, is to look at these public-private partnerships when it comes to science and research, particularly when we talk about what the ISC mission is, science as a global public good. And during the retreats, it was quite interesting because we had the discussion on how experts in the region are thinking about scalability, or are they thinking about scalability of the types of technologies that they might be interested in using more widely. But also we had examples from outside of the scope of the meeting, where a colleague from LIFES, so this is an initiative in Leiden in the Netherlands, that shared with us on their experience as how they initiate discussions between the private and public sector on data standards, usage, sharing, and needs, where they bring these two actors from these different sectors to discuss this in an open platform. And then IDRC, so the funder, also shared with us a sort of project that they've been working on, where they bring small startups to collaborate with the universities and share postdocs or PhDs to be able to have this sort of research and development collaboration. So this was kind of, I just wanted to give you an idea of what we have so far on this emerging technologies and transformations. Vanessa, you let me know if I can just go into directly the other second part, so that in sake of time, we continue. Good. So given that I kind of, I just discussed some of these examples that were discussed in the retreat itself, I wanted to also connect to the last part of the project that's kind of still in its brainstorming stage. And we felt this is a good place for us to check in with you as a ISC community and members, and kind of get your input as well. So this part of the project is also to have this touch on private and industry sector. Because as we know, technologies are majorly driven and developed by the private sector. And so one of the parts of the project that we think is important for a full project on what we're trying to do with emerging technologies is to have this reflexive community between public and private STI organizations, where we focus on emerging technologies, but we also think of guidelines that would allow for private-public partnership and to identify the practices that lead to this kind of partnership, where science is seen as a global public good, and really, that is the shared common goal. The challenge, of course, knowing that the public sector and public funding, they have critical roles in initiating research and development. The private sector is largely responsible for the technology advancement and development. And with these different drivers, it's challenging to have these public-private partnerships with the different expectations on the delivery and the type of goals. So here, this is just something to share with you now, and we're going to go into a bit more interactive session right after. We are suggesting as part of this project some of the things that we've identified as sort of important from the ISC community, or what we've seen through our work, where suggested themes of exploration when it comes to private-public partnership could include something on production, use, storage, and sharing of data. So where this is moving away from centralized repositories to a more networked data access, federated search, and infrastructure capabilities and workforce capacity. Another one is on impact of private-public partnerships on academic publishing. As we can imagine, that is quite a big thing already happening now. How is it going to be like in the future with these different technologies? And also new connectivity technology, something that I already mentioned as part of the emerging technologies, but what kind of impact it would have on the research and science. So I'll stop here and maybe ask you to see if this works. And I'm guessing, actually, maybe in the sake of time, Vanessa, should we directly go to the slides and ask people to share directly in the chat? I'm aware that we only have 10 minutes. Or are you trying? I see you're trying the code.
Up to you, Doreen. You go ahead.
Okay, let's ask people to quickly scan the codes. And then you'll see, I hope, the first question. Are there other themes you think should be considered for this project? So please just take a minute to reflect on this question. Given the questions that I already highlighted that we are thinking about, what do you think the themes that we should be thinking about as well for this project? It would be great to have some ideas from you. So feel free to. Is it working? Yeah.
It's working, but I'm only getting to the first question, which I think is about what things are important for public-private partnerships.
Oh, it's the last one.
Oh, is it
Okay.
the last one?
That's good.
Okay.
Let's do that then. So what do you think should be central to exploring private-public relationship for research and science? I see that these are already the results, right?
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me for being a bit slow with this, right? Yeah. So I see inclusivity, participation, ethics, trust, understanding, sustainability. Yeah, vote data, colonization, communication, collaboration, inclusivity funding being some of the most important. willingness, execution. This is great. So it's nice to see that people are thinking of one important word, you know, it's something that can be almost clear in terms of a fundamental aspect. Intersectionality, mutual benefits. That's a very good one. Something that we do think about. How do we engage on mutual benefits? So yeah, I mean, I think this is something that, of course, as the ISC, we are very, you know, we want to be as sure as possible about how we would engage in such a project, such a theme, where we do have this intersectionality, and we want to put science at the front, science for the public good, particularly scientific responsibility. Thank you, guys. So maybe we can go to the second question.
I'm not sure we can go to the second question, but if people are playing around with that, we can also take some questions or some input from colleagues verbally now or on the chat.
Great, yes.
I think, you know, it would also be very insightful to hear from you around science industry collaborations you've had that have worked well, and if we can get in touch with you to kind of, you know, help distill some of the principles that solidify that relationship, or maybe if you've had a converse experience, you know, things that didn't work well at all, as we just see a lot more funding for science and technology development happening through the private sector. I think it becomes increasingly important to explore those relationships.
So please feel free to raise your hand or add the comment directly in the chat at this point. So the question that Vanessa and I are asking are there examples from your own institution or your work on collaboration or partnership with the private sector that you can share with us as sort of an example? And it would be great, you know, even if you'd like to come in and tell us a bit more about that kind of example, that would be very useful. And so another kind of, yeah, I would had already shared this question. Are there other themes you think we should be considering for this project? So these two different questions, that would be great to hear from you. I think we have Vanessa already a question.
Camilo, go ahead.
Hi, Vanessa. How you doing? Hi, Abby. There is something that I think is important to discuss within this relationship between public and private sectors. That is the number of private companies that the country has. Because, for example, here in Colombia, I mean, we don't have many, I mean, the science budget, I mean, this came from the public sector, because there are not as much companies, no? We have many multinational companies, but the national companies are few. So in the sense, it's difficult to make this agreement between the public and private sector. So I think this is something that is important to consider, no? A number of private companies that could support the research. No?
Thanks very much. I've made a note of that, and we'll take that forward. Had a very useful link in the chat, actually, from Jing Li around some dialogues that they've been having as part of our member, the Global Ocean Observing System, dialogues with industry at a very crucial time, I guess, for Goose. So thanks for that. That'd be really useful to follow up on. And a worked example already. Well, I think we may have exhausted the questions, but I would like to reiterate that we very much appreciate if you do get in touch with us. Our email addresses are in the chat, and has put them in there. either myself, Doreen, or Abby regarding the Digital Journeys project. Even if something comes to you after this meeting, or you'd be willing to share a link with us, we'd very much appreciate hearing from you. And of course, it will help us in scoping this, the rest of this project. So I think with that, I would like to thank our wonderful members for their time and their energy that they've given to this. I would like to thank the speakers, Doreen and Abby, for running the project, but also giving such a fantastic overview. And also to the staff in the back for the kind of production of this meeting. And then just a final word of thanks to our funders, the IDRC, through whom we are managing to do this work.